So this session is being recorded, just in case you have to drop off early or you want to share this with a colleague. We will send the recording to everyone after the webinar ends. And I wanted to thank everyone for joining us today. My name is Marley Long, and I will go ahead and start us off. So today we are covering analytics and communication, what you need to know for an effective SharePoint migration. And we have our partner here from NBI. So we have Chris Dibbs with us as well as Arias. So thanks for joining us today, guys.
Thanks for having us, Marley. Good meeting all of you.
And the goal of this presentation is that you will walk away with some key strategies as well as metrics that you can use to further improve your SharePoint or Office 365 migration. So just a bit of housekeeping, as I mentioned before, that this webinar is being recorded. So if you want to share this with anyone, we will be sending the recording out. You can also connect to us on Twitter. Our Twitter handle is @Cardiolog, as well as NBI's Twitter is @NowIntelligence. And of course, if you have any questions during the session, we'll leave some time towards the end, so you can send them through the questions panel through the questions box in the GoToWebinar panel. So in regards for today's agenda, we'll just start out with a really quick introduction. Then I'll hand it over to Chris, who is an expert on SharePoint migrations, and he will cover some of the best practices on ensuring an effective migration. Then I'll jump into a presentation with some tips and most powerful metrics that you can use to monitor your migration during each step. And in the end, hopefully we'll have some time for Q&A, so feel free to send your questions again if you have any throughout the course of the presentation. We'll take them at the end. So just a brief introduction about Intlock Cardiolog Analytics. So Intlock has been around now for about 12 years, since 2005. So our office is based out of Boston, and we have for the past 12 years, we've been focused on analytics designed for SharePoint and now Office 365. Our flagship solution is Cardiolog Analytics, and it's built specifically for internal platforms, including all versions of SharePoint from 2007 to 2016, as well as SharePoint Online and Office 365. We can also track third-party tools like Yammer, Citrion, and CRM. And our solution is available as both an on-prem as well as a SaaS-based version on Power BI. And just a quick update, as of July, we recently launched our engagement tool called Cardiolog Engage, which I will be showing you guys throughout the course of this presentation. So that's another kind of exciting new feature that we have available to kind of close the loop on analytics. So at this time, I'm going to hand the presentation off to Chris. So he's going to kind of get us started with some of those best practices. So I'm giving you control, Chris.
All right. Thank you. I am Chris Dibbs with Now Business Intelligence. I have been personally working with SharePoint since the early days of 2007. I'm quite grateful with the number of upgrades that have happened since then. I'd also like to introduce my colleague, Arias Humboldt.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Arias Humboldt. I am responsible for sales and marketing here at NBI, and I just want to thank you for your time this morning. We're looking forward to giving you some good information about how to effectively migrate SharePoint using some Cardiolog tools and using some of the insights that you can obtain from their tools.
Hey, Chris, we can't see your screen at the moment.
Sorry?
It's okay.
One moment, something obviously is being bad. Let me just share everything. Can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent. So, high-level overview of NBI. NBI is an information strategies and software development firm located right outside of Boston in Everett, Massachusetts. We've been around for 7 years. We work with the federal government and defense sectors. One of the things that makes us stand out among professional services vendors is we've consistently delivered on time and on budget. We often tie our results to some quantifiable business advantage and ROI. Studies that reveal some ROI studies we've done up on our website. One of the things that we also think distinguishes us from others in our industry is we don't consider ourselves consultants, but we consider ourselves to be your delivery partner. Our end goal is your end goal, whatever that might be. We have a commitment, again, to deliver on budget and on time. It's not just a commitment, it's a guarantee. Our team of technologists brings decades of experience to our development team and to our customers. One of the other distinguishing factors about NBI and a differentiator is you're getting senior level resources dedicated to your account as opposed to junior level resources. Our experience migrating SharePoint, we've been doing it, as Chris says, he's been doing it for quite a long time. We've done some pretty large SharePoint migrations from a 2003 environment that involved about 9 petabytes of data. We've done quite a few file share like Dropbox or Box.com to SharePoint migrations. We've also worked with other third-party platform providers to migrate them from their current platforms like WebSphere or eRoom or DocuShare. We've moved quite a few customers to a new SharePoint environment. We believe in automating the migration as much as possible and communicating fully with the customer through every step of our delivery process. With that, I'll hand it over to Chris Dibbs, our lead developer and primary presenter today. Chris?
All right. Thank you, Aureus. So in theory, SharePoint migrations are simple, right? You just simply take the stuff that's on, say, SharePoint 2013 to SharePoint Online. I'm going to use this as an example today. Really, any SharePoint to any other SharePoint is very much the same when you approach it from a strategic level. But as I said, most customers start with the idea in their head. You just take the stuff that's over here and you get it over here. But as we all know as technical people, the difference between theory and practice is often quite large. So the first step in understanding how complex a SharePoint migration can be is understanding that the tools out there on the market don't do what customers expect. Largely tools like Metalogix or ShareGate, or sometimes, and we will use this depending on if it's the right way for the client, simply copying and pasting the documents from the source to the target, is that the tools are really great at moving the lists, the libraries, the documents, the files. They won't move the customizations. They won't move the branding. Anything outside of those kinds of basic files and documents aren't moved by the tools. Now, the good news is, as far as the size of a SharePoint server, this is the vast weight of it. But you still need to address those customizations. And as I said, the customizations are things like branding and CSS. Primarily, the #1 tactic to move a customization is to not move a customization. You want to archive and minimize any customizations you can. This has actually been a theme throughout SharePoint since the beginning. Me personally, starting in 2007, things were the wild, wild west. You installed full trust solutions inside of your SharePoint server, and people wondered why SharePoint wasn't that stable, to now having products like Office 365, SharePoint Online. You have an incredibly stable environment, but it's also incredibly locked down, where the options and standard customizations you did back in the day aren't even possible anymore. Which brings us to the next thing. Any customizations that need to move over for business purposes often can't move over simply because of the differences between the versions of SharePoint. The info path form from yesterday doesn't translate well to the info path form of today, or the web parts you have to upgrade to the next version of the web parts. This is something that Cardiolog is actually very good at helping you identify where some of these things are. So as I mentioned before, the most common customization is actually branding. Everyone gets SharePoint, everyone looks at SharePoint and says, I don't want SharePoint to look like SharePoint. So they put a big branding effort together, at which point they go to move to the next version of SharePoint, and the rules for branding SharePoint have changed because Microsoft has fundamentally changed the product. And then they're shocked in horror that the sometimes millions of dollars they spent on branding get thrown in the trash. Which leads us to our primary recommendation for any good SharePoint server: don't brand it. Again, kind of with that, you have things like master pages, add-ins, info path forms, ghosted pages, and custom metadata. The style of metadata has changed a lot between servers. Pages that are stuck inside the content databases often provide problems. So any complicated SharePoint environment that has lots of customizations to it is difficult to move regardless of how big the server is. So identifying how big a server is, it's very easy to grab things like the site collection count, the site count, the user count, the document count. This will give you a very good understanding of how big the SharePoint server is, in addition to finding the actual raw gigabytes of the server, which isn't as useful as a number as most people think. Now, measuring the customizations, it's very easy to get the number of workflows, the number of features, the number of pages, but getting down to usage and Webpart metrics is a really great gap that Cardiolog fills in to give you that next level deep data.
That's a great point, Chris, and that's something that we talk with our customers a lot about. Is some of those out-of-the-box features from, I don't know if anyone has seen the new Adoption Content Pack that was recently released for tracking Office 365, and there are a lot of really great features in that content pack that allow organizations to track some of those larger usage trends. But that gap does still exist when you want to drill down and you want to really find those pain points and find where your challenges lie. And that's again, that's where we kind of come in to fill the gap. And I'll focus on that a little bit more as well in my presentation.
Thank you, and you're absolutely right. It is a definite gap that needs to be filled. So, where does a successful migration begin? Well, it starts well before you touch or even begin thinking about moving the stuff from your SharePoint 2013 server to your online server. It really begins all the way back to the initial planning process. We always recommend hiring experts to do jobs. So coming in as somebody who is an expert at moving SharePoint, the first thing we need to do is really understand how does the current environment work, what is it like, as well as what they think they're going to get out of the new SharePoint environment, and really understand and set their expectations of what it's going to be like. And you really want to begin, even at the very beginning, bringing them down from the high of what the new SharePoint Online is really going to give them to the reality of it's going to take a lot of effort to get things to move from one version of the server to the other, because in addition to the size and the complexity, there's the fact that over time SharePoint has become a mess. That's because when people use things, it just tends towards chaos. Myself, at our organization, I fully admit that I am the source of most of the messes on our SharePoint server. So I understand that I expect to see a SharePoint server that's got a lot of data that needs to be archived, and beginning to suss those out during the planning process is crucial. So a closer look at what a SharePoint migration will be is, in the beginning, there is your assessment, and your assessment really begins with understanding the current SharePoint environment, the scope of those customizations I talked about, and the size of the SharePoint environment, as well as understanding what they want their new SharePoint to be, what do they want their policies and procedures to be on their SharePoint, what lessons that they learned and do they want to use this as an opportunity to fix. And the second step of that is beginning the preparation. That's where you begin the process of archiving anything that they don't want to move over, as well as if they don't have something like Cardiolog, that's the point where we install Cardiolog on their server to begin gathering metrics to validate what they told us in the current state is true, as well as finding things that could be archived, identifying small sites with friendly power users within the client that we can move over early and gain quick wins to begin winning the perception game, and as well as finding the bigger, more complicated sites that we know will need more care and mindfulness as we move them over.
And I think, Chris, that fits perfectly into what we talk about when we talk about taking action from the analytics that we provide. And I'll actually show you guys exactly how you can do this. So exactly how you can take action and really manage that portal sprawl that we're talking about here as well.
Right. And the next step is actually in the entire process, by far the easiest part, and that's physically moving the stuff from the old SharePoint server to the new SharePoint server. By the time you get to here, you've planned out what you're going to do, you've already done a couple of small sites, and you really just want to cycle through and really follow your well laid out plan and continue setting and resetting expectations. This is something that, especially when you get into more complicated sites, you will discover new things. There will be things that you miss, and you have to build that slack into your plan to cover those. So once you finally get things over onto the new SharePoint server, you move into what we refer to as the hypercare mode, and that's where you work to build and rebuild features on the SharePoint environment, rebuild any metadata or upgrade to new metadata, rebuild info path forms, rebuild any customizations really happen towards the end. And in parallel to that, you want to be monitoring the SharePoint server to, one, watch and find out who is adopting the SharePoint. Watch for any pages that start to get slower and start fixing them before clients start complaining about things, as well as find people who aren't adopting the SharePoint server to go talk to them and see how you can help them along in that process. Again, this is something that Cardiolog is very good at identifying for us. Right. So the truth of an assessment is really all that, plus in parallel, maintaining a process of communicating, setting, and resetting expectations, because we want to end up with a happy client at the end of this who's adopted their SharePoint server that is a much cleaner, much pristine environment that they can begin the process of messing up for the next time that we come by and clean things up. But we also want a client that wasn't surprised, that we met their expectations and we carried this through and made them feel like this migration was like theory. Even though it was complex, we want them to feel like they didn't have to think about anything. It was just as simple as taking their SharePoint server, calling NBI and Cardiolog, and getting their new SharePoint server. So with that, thank you. I'm going to hand it back to you, and we're going to go through the details of how to do and pull some of those Cardiolog reports that I was talking about. Marley, thank you.
Great, thanks, Chris. That was definitely a very interesting overview of kind of how a migration works, and really how to set those expectations. So I'm going to go dive a little bit more into the analytics now. Okay, so I want to take a step back I know we talked a lot about how analytics can help you detect X, Y, Z, but I want to take a step even further back and talk about why, what is the purpose of analytics and why do we need them when we're talking about a SharePoint migration. So the key here is really that you can only manage what you measure. So only can you really know what's going on during a SharePoint migration and really define if your deployment was successful and measure if people are using it and that adoption is increasing as expected is by being able to measure what's going on. And that's really the end goal that we work with our customers on. So how can we measure that deployment, analyze it, and ensure success? So by leveraging analytics, you can really find out whether your portal is performing as you expected and whether it is truly providing value to the organization based on a variety of engagement methods that you can do as well. So if you've already decided to take the big step of the migration from one version of SharePoint to the next, it really only makes sense to deploy analytics during that process. So, perhaps you've even taken on migrating to SharePoint Online. So as daunting as, this may seem, there are, a variety of ways to really manage and take control of this process and kind of start out with some of, the more basic analytics that will really help you during each phase. So we talk about these three phases, so your before phase, your during phase, and your after phase. So I will go into a little bit more detail on which metrics fit best into each stage of the migration. So for now, I'm going to jump into a demo of Cardiolog Analytics. So as you can see here, this is the Cardiolog Analytics SaaS interface. And what I'm talking about here is actually how you can create and analyze your reports. So this is an all-encompassing SaaS solution. We do have an on-prem solution as well, which is available. Our SaaS solution is provided through Power BI, as you can see here, and it's a really powerful data visualization interface, and it's hosted on Microsoft Azure servers. Cardiolog SaaS comes with a set of pre-made reports that we put together in a way that we think would be most beneficial to our users. We also worked with our customers to come up with these categories to help them put things into perspective when measuring SharePoint and also when measuring a migration process. So of course the primary purpose is to provide the data, but we really wanted to take it a step further so that these reports inherently already help our users know how they should measure their business and portal goals. So for our purposes today, we're going to focus mainly on some portal resources reports as well as some adoption reports. And these are all reports that can help you improve your migration and help you get those insights that you need at the right time. So let's jump now into our pre-migration stage. I'll jump over to our portal resources reports. And as Chris mentioned, one of the most important steps to take before any migration initiative is really to prepare and clean up the portal sites, your list, your documents. So this can include archiving or deleting unused content from the portal, which will really ease your migration process and really allow your organization to only migrate the content that's needed. So you can use analytics to detect which pieces of content are not being used, which I'll show you in just a bit, and that should really ease your process. And again, as Chris mentioned, those kind of quick wins, this is a really easy way to do that. So there are a variety of reports that can be particularly useful and really give you a big picture idea of what's going on in your portal in terms of your resources and really assist you in supporting your migration. So here at the top you can see just a few simplistic visuals. So you can see your number of tree items is around 1,739. Your number of unused items here is around 254. You can also filter here on the right-hand side according to month or quarter specifically. So let's go ahead. We can filter by the month of February. And you can see it's just a really quick and easy way to slice and dice your data, that everything is dynamic and will reflect once you filter. Make sure I filtered. There we go. So here you can see a few charts that also let you drill down into your data as well. So for example, you can see your portal size chart here. So you can see everything here. If you want to drill down, I can drill down into SharePoint Online. Here I can see our team site, for example, is the largest of your portal. And you can also see your size by content type over here on the right-hand side. So it's quite obvious here that you can see, for example, your documents are what take up the largest amount of your portal. So this is really important when you're going through the portal cleanup process and you kind of just want to have a quick look at the report and kind of have this big picture idea and say, okay, what part of my portal is taking up the most space right now? And right off the bat, I can see documents are taking up, a huge amount of space, and then I can actually dive into my documents, so I can actually drill down into my documents themselves. If I drill down here and see, okay, maybe I can, archive some specific documents or delete them. And I'll actually show you in another report kind of a better way to visualize that and actually do that cleanup process. And again, you can also see your trends over time here. So whether at the bottom showing your content creation. So I'm going to move now to our unused content reports. And one of the most important steps to take, as we talked about, is to really prepare and clean up your sites and your documents. So you can use these analytics to detect, again, all of this as we discussed. And they can also be particularly helpful during a cutover migration process, for example, when you want to get things done quickly and you're really looking for results, those quick wins. So here you can actually see this information for an entire tracking period, or again for a specific month, like I mentioned. So we can filter by February again. So here we can see that most of the size of the portal is again taken by documents. You can see here, you can visualize this in a number of different ways. We can also see this visualized through this pie chart here.
And as I mentioned in my presentation, this is actually my favorite report for not only seeing who's using what, but also picking those quick wins that you can get at the beginning to really begin the process of winning over expectations for a migration.
Right, so you can actually see, for example, if you want to take action and clean up the portal, this is just a really great way to visualize this by your content, by size and amount of page views. And another really great way that I like to show this visual, that you can see it actually growing over time. I can actually make this larger. So here you can actually see your content by size and the amount of page views that they get over time, which is also just, a really nice visualization that allows you to see how the data is changing over time. And then again, when we talk about those quick wins, I'll show you actually my favorite report. So we'll come here to our second unused content report. And here you can see your content with your highest amount of page views, as well as you can flip it around and you can actually see your lowest amount of page views as well. So once you know that you have this popular content that you can easily see here, so here you can see these are all, let's filter this again. Okay, so now you can see all of your content that is most popular within your portal. You can actually make this larger as well. So you may want to link to that content on your homepage or in your new portal. So for example, if this, let's take for example this home site, if it's, or maybe that's not as good of the document. Okay, so this document, for example, again, we're working with demo data here. So if you want to take this document, you see it's very popular. You might want to, instead of having people wasting a lot of time clicking through the portal to try and find it, you can easily create these links and We can place them on a home page or create buttons for them to really make it easier for people to find these specific documents. We can also flip this around. There we go. And now we can actually see all of our inactive content. So this is also a really great way that you can kind of zoom in. And you have a lot of content here that actually has 0 page views, whether it's your sites, your documents, your pages, or more. Of course, you can actually filter this report if you want to filter it by content type. So if you would only like to see your documents, for example, then you can actually see only your most popular or your least popular documents. So right now we're seeing data for the entire portal, but you can filter and slice and dice this information in any way that you would like. And so again, this is all of our unused or our orphan documents, and this is really where we can take action. So we can get rid of them or delete them if they're unused. We can also update them. So you can see here, for example, you have some of this content that has 0 page views, or for example here, this resources page has 0 page views, but actually the size of this page is very, very large. You can also see here, all of these content pieces are very large in size, but actually have 0 page views. And again, you can see who the owner is as well. So you can simply just, contact Joe, for example, whoever the owner is, and say, hey Joe, you have 60 days to either update this content and place it somewhere where it's going to get more page views, or please remove this content. If not, then you can, of course, have your administrator take action. But it's a really great way to, again, kind of take control of this portal cleanup process and really manage all of these unused content pieces. Go ahead and erase all of my wonderful art. So I'm going to jump now into what we call our during stage of the migration process. And here is where I will show you quickly our engagement tool. And I just want to show you how easy it is to target your SharePoint users during a migration process so that you can really understand if they're adapting to the new portal and if they're finding what they're looking for. So this is Cardiolog Engage, which helps users find what they're looking for or targets them to ask them what they think about the new environment. So you can simply ask people if they found, if they're having challenges. You can also target newbies, for example. So let's go in and create a new campaign. So we came up with a list of templated goals based upon things that people would like to achieve within SharePoint. Of course, you can also customize it in any way. You can create your own goals as well. But for example, we can ask someone if a page was useful for them. So from here, we can actually target who we would like to receive this campaign, and it's actually integrated with the analytics. So you can actually see here your newbies, so these are people who did not visit any page for more than a month or ever, and the number here reflects that number based on your analytics. So for our purposes, we'll target everyone, but you can segment this in any way that you'd like. And you can actually pick a channel here, so you can contact them by phone, by text message. The options are really endless at this point, by desktop notification, smart distributor, email, in-app message, and some of our advanced channels as well. So let's go ahead and click on in-app message. Once you click here, you can actually see a variety of different ways that you can actually place this message on the screen. So you can do pop-up, you can do a header, yellow note, a badge on the side. So let's go for the full screen. And of course, you can customize this text any way you'd like as well. So you can say, was this page useful? And we can call it something like new SharePoint portal. So then you can actually see what challenges your users are having within the portal and what your usability looks like in the new portal in order to constantly tweak it and make improvements. You can also kind of pop-up you like, so whether they have to interact with the message or not. You can edit the frequency, and of course you have tons of customizations that you can do in terms of color, very exciting stuff. You can also send your call to action text and redirect this to any home page. So if you'd like to send them to a particular site within the new portal, this is also a really effective way to do that as well. And then you can actually select how you would like to trigger it. So you can trigger it immediately, you can schedule it. We have smart timing as well as setting up a trigger to run the campaign based on user behavior. So we can select that. We can also segment this even more. So when someone is viewing a specific page, a good example that I like to think of is if someone is sitting on a search results page for more than 40 seconds. At that point, we can infer that they probably didn't find what they searched for. So you can actually send them a very targeted message asking them, did you find what you're looking for, or what were you searching for? So then you can actually go back and really improve your search schema and improve that search functionality within SharePoint or Office 365 as well. And this is just a quick summary, but again, this is a really great way to launch these targeted campaigns and really bring your migration full circle. So you're really integrating your analytics as well as this kind of personal touch and really getting this feedback that you need from your users to really understand if you had an effective migration and to help them during the process as well. So I'm going to go back very quickly now to our last stage of the migration process, and we're going to go and we're going to talk a little bit more about adoption. So I'm going to navigate back to our usage overview report. So our last stage is this after stage of a migration process. Chris mentioned this as well, that this is all about your adoption. So we're going to use this adoption overview report to understand this a little bit better. So during the migration process, we can actually generate a usage trend report to go and see what your usage looks like from Farm A. So for example, maybe you have SharePoint 2013, like we have displayed here, to SharePoint Online, and really see how the usage is comparing. So for example, I can select, this is our portal tree filter here, and you can select to see only data for SharePoint 2013. I have a slight glitch here, sorry guys. Or you can select to filter data only for SharePoint Online. So you can really compare these trends for a site that you've migrated, for example, that HR site, and see if its users from the HR department are still using the old version or if they've successfully migrated to the new version. So how can you do that? Again, I showed you this portal tree structure here, and this really allows you to drill down into your metrics. So you can see I'm filtering only for SharePoint Online, but if I want, I can actually deselect that and actually drill down even deeper into SharePoint Online. So for example, if I'd like to drill down into just my Intlock team site within SharePoint Online, I can simply select that. And again, all of this information is dynamic and will show only information for my Intlock team site. I can actually drill down within the team site, so I can see lists within this team site now. And if I want to drill down even further, I can go down into my micro feeds, for example, and the possibilities are really endless. You can drill down, even to your document level, and that's really, really great, again, for really trying to understand where your challenges lie within SharePoint. And for this report specifically, all this information that you see here, you can also drill down into it within the report as well. So for example, if I want to drill down into this content piece of my report, I can simply drill down. And again, I can drill down into SharePoint Online. And then again, I can drill down all the way to my document level, to my microfeed level, to really investigate what's going on. And our next piece that I want to showcase here with just a little bit of the time that we have left is this adoption segment. So this widget shows our unique users and groups and attributes. And here you can actually see all of your departments within your user groups. So you can actually hover over them as I'm doing here and see the number of visits per user, which we can see here is around, let's see, it's around 7. And we have about active users, we have about 77 in the quality assurance group. Here we can see we have about 75 active users within our marketing group. So these groups here are really kind of, you can tell that they're actually adopting to the portal. They're probably getting more value out of the portal. But here, if I kind of scroll down, I can see within my purchasing department, so they have their, what we would call, some of our lagger groups. So they've got around 56 active users. And their average depth of visit, you can see here just by hovering, is just around 4. So this quick report can really help you understand what the usage trends look like across your groups, and can help you understand maybe where you should allocate more attention, or maybe where you should make those important decisions about training. So instead of training, all of your groups across the board, that might not make the most sense. It might, not make sense financially as well, because we all know that training can be quite expensive. So instead, we can actually select to train, only these groups that have very low adoption levels. But that might not be, the only thing that you can do. You can actually drill down within these groups as well. So for example, if I'd like to drill down into one of my lagging groups, so for example, my inventory group, so here I can actually see all of my users within my inventory group. So for example, I can see Marcia, I can see Marianne, and again, for our purposes, this is just demo data, but here you would actually see who are your most active users within that group, and again, who are your laggers who have 0 activity within this group. And this is also, again, you can apply that same method. So you can actually say, you can refine this method even more, actually, and you can say, let's not train everyone within that specific lagging group, but let's track only the laggers within that lagging group, because you actually can see that you do have some very active users within that group. And on the flip side, you can actually, leverage those users. So maybe ask them to share their knowledge with the users who are less active in the group, and really help them kind of help the group as well. And again, it's definitely important when looking at this option and looking at these numbers, and I talked about it before, that it's important to be able to tie back these metrics into your plan about understanding your adoption numbers, because you're going to be looking to understand these overviews before you migrate, while you migrate, and after you migrate, and they can really lead you into a path of giving you the right information at the right time and to the right people. So whether using the analytics from the usage side, you can see who is doing what, and then again from the engagement side, I think that's a very missed point in a lot of migrations. It's helping people gather the right information and target this information for the right people to know who's doing what. So in the middle of migrating, letting people know if we missed something, or if there's something that you're looking for, that you may not have done previously in the previous portal. You can also let people know, hey, your site's being moved to in a certain time, or this is happening, do you want to be involved? And a lot of engagement is really, really powerful to get that the business involved and really let them know what's happening, and really set the business up for success of a really engaged new portal. So that's about all the time that I have for our presentation today. I do want to invite anyone who is interested in more of these migration analytics to check out our ebook. We have an ebook on migration analytics, which I would be happy to send to anyone. You can simply send me a message, and I'll be happy to send you the link. It's on our website. And at this time, Chris, if you have anything to add at the end of your presentation, we'd be happy to hear.
No, thank you very much. I'd actually like to open the floor to questions at this point, if we're up to that, and also if folks have any off-topics questions they want to ask about Power Apps, Power BI, or any kind of SharePoint customizations, I'd be happy to field those questions as well.
Great. So we'll give you guys just a few seconds if you have any questions that you'd like to submit to us. And if you have any questions maybe after the session that you didn't think of during the session, you can also send those questions to us. You can see our, you can tweet us at Cardiolog, and you can also go to our websites, www.intlock.com, as well as www.nowintelligence.com as well. All right, well, I don't see any questions coming in at this time, but again, as I mentioned, if anyone wants to submit something to us, we'd be more than happy. You can send an email to info@intlock.com, as well as, do you guys have a generic email that you guys could take questions for as well?
Absolutely, info@nowintelligence.com.
Great. All right.
And I just want to thank the audience for staying with us and giving us a few minutes of your day. We look forward to working with you on your migrations.
Great. And thanks again, everyone. And we look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Arias.
Thanks, Marley.